kicking, never quitting. Focus sharp like a blade that's hitting. From white belt dreams to the master flow, Paul Coffey's got the mic, now the stories grow. Technique entails discipline and fire. Each guest brings truth to inspire. Keep kicking, step into your power. Keep kicking, moment to the hour. Every strike, every fall, every rise, it's a journey through a warrior's eyes. Old school, new school, all styles blend. From the mat to the mic, where the arts ascend. Philosophy deep, but the vibe stays tight. Martial minds meeting in the podcast light. Keep kicking, step into your power. Keep kicking, moment to the hour. Every strike, every fall, every rise, it's a journey through a warrior's eyes. Keep kicking. Keep kicking. Paul Coffey leads and the journey begins. Paul Coffey leads and the journey begins. Technique entails discipline and fire. Each guest brings truth to inspire. Keep kicking, step into your power. Keep kicking, moment to the hour. Every strike, every fall, every rise, it's a journey through a warrior's eyes. Keep kicking. Keep kicking. Paul Coffey leads and the journey begins.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Keep Kicking, martial arts podcast, where I have martial conversations with my martial arts friends. Today, I sit down with Lindsay. She's been on a couple of other podcasts, and I like to let other people do the light work for me. So that's already out of the way. Lindsay, do you want to introduce yourself for the people and also give them 2 or 3 sentences on, your martial background?
Sure. My name is Lindsay Lambert. I own and operate Wudao Kung Fu and Tai Chi in Watertown, Mass, which is a little suburb of Boston. I've been training in Kung Fu for about 20 years. I've been doing movement and dance movement education, starting with dance for much longer than that. I started when I was a teenager. I'm from Blue Hill, Maine, and I've lived in a couple different areas in the New England area. And yeah, I've been teaching for a really long time, and Paul reached out, and here we are.
Absolutely. Okay, so the first thing is, how does dance improve martial arts?
I don't know if you could sort of that's a good question, I guess. I mean, any kind of physicality that a student or a teacher brings to the table is going to be, maybe additive or subtractive to whatever process they're going to go through in the learning process. So it's a tricky comparison, I think, because martial arts is not dance. And I think sometimes I mean, obviously it's not dance. We all know that, right? But I think a lot of people kind of maybe compare the two a lot because like you're moving your body in space and sometimes there is a rhythm and forms and sequences can have a very elegant and beautiful and stylized way of moving. So in a way, if you have a dance background as a student, it can help you kind of identify your ability to learn shapes and choreography and form and movement, whereas otherwise you might be starting from scratch where you're like, I have 2 feet and 2 hands and one's got to go forwards and the other one's got to go backwards and not so sure how that's going to work. Whereas if you're a dancer, you probably have a lot more availability to kind of encounter those things, right? But I've also, on the other hand, whereas like if you're coming into the kind of the physical classroom with a lot of dance exposure and a lot of dance sort of experience can be good because it'll help you learn, but it can also be a bit of a hindrance because the ranges of motion in dance and kind of where you extend and expand your body isn't always going to help you in a martial situation, right? Like you don't want to get
Say
your body
more.
out of structure. Sorry, go ahead.
Say more.
Um, so like I was lucky enough to teach a friend of mine. He's a contortionist, and I've known him since I was a teenager, and I'm still in contact. Really rarely I get the chance to kind of hang with him, but he's super wonderful, interesting guy. And I don't actually know where he's located right now, but I was teaching him a little bit of Tai Chi over probably not in the center of the pandemic, but somewhere around there. And his range of motion is tremendous.
Mhm.
And if you have ever done any interfacing with another person, like push hands or wrestling or anything
Mhm.
like that, you know that when your body is opened up or closed off, you don't have as much availability to move or
Mhm.
to create power or generate power or maintain your root or kind of take advantage of your body's natural ability to have a structure. So, like if your arms go way far behind you, it's really hard for them to
Mhm.
then get out in front of you. So, whereas dance has a lot of, overlaps in the martial kind of sphere, there's also certain things that are not really taken into consideration in terms of those form and movement, at least in terms of
Mhm.
like how I teach it. And, there's certain styles that I've seen that might not pay that much attention to that if they're not kind of linking the form and movement to actual application, which
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you never plan on using your body against another body, then those things are
Mhm.
fine. And if they look fine and that's the function of the practice, then that's fine. But if you ever want to, you know, push somebody over or keep yourself from being pushed over, then you need to kind of keep those structural elements in mind. And that's a major difference, I think, from dance to, and there
Mhm.
are other structural elements in dance that are not in martial arts, right? Like, cause like
Yeah.
lifts
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
ballet or like jumps in ballet or partnered work or whatever, like there has to be structure and form and movement there. I'm not saying that there isn't structure in dance,
Mhm. Mhm.
but it's just different for a different reason.
Sure. I like that. I like that response. So I tell everybody that one of the reasons I started this podcast was selfish in the same way that, most of us in martial arts, partially in teaching, we do that out of selfishness. Just because if I throw this technique I'm trying to think about at a dozen different people and I watch them dissect it, in watching them dissect it, I learn from it. So the same thing happens in this podcast is just me like talking through things that I'm currently working on in my own martial arts preview. And so that said, this question starts with an omission, and that is being a lifelong practitioner of martial arts. I recognize that I am equal parts sadistic and masochistic, and I'm probably in the minority. So the average student that comes through the dojo doors is not that. And so then the question is, how do you teach nonviolent people to speak the language of violence when it's necessary?
I think that I don't know. Let's talk through it. I mean, it happens. It happens. Whether or not people are comfortable with it, it happens. And like, and also violence, I think, and not to get super esoteric about this and language and all that stuff and semantics, violence exists outside of physicality as well. And
Mm-hmm.
you can kind,
Yes.
you can kind of experience violence without ever having somebody lay a finger on you. So, and oftentimes certain communities do, and we're learning kind of more about that these days. And I think I tend to agree in that people who gravitate towards martial arts have a tendency towards, maybe a little bit of masochism, maybe a little bit of that, maybe
Right.
of that a desire to burn a little bit hotter than's comfortable for most people.
Right.
But I think everybody kind of comes to that at their own, and I say that as somebody
Mm.
who has kind of been there as well. Like, so I went to art school. My background educationally, professionally, I guess, or like officially is in illustration. And as maybe most folks, I fit a very particular stereotype of like peaceful reconciliation and like maybe don't hurt people and that then violence is wrong, blah, blah, blah. And then I had a really interesting conversation with a friend. We called him Shinobi Mike. And if Shinobi Mike ever comes to listen to this podcast, he'll probably know who he is. But he was a cool guy. And I was just walking down the street. I lived in Portland, Maine for a long time, and I was just walking down Congress Street, as one does. And he was telling me about how he beat the hell out of this guy one night. And I was like, that sucks. And like, kind of, I judged him quite a bit at that moment. And then we talked about it. And he was like, well, yeah, this guy was being really obnoxious and really himself was being violent. And like, he needed to know that that was not all right, and he needed to like, what if he was being violent against somebody who wasn't me, and like, what if he was being violent against like a little kid or an older woman or a younger woman or a little anybody else who couldn't handle that situation. And I was like, that's really interesting. So, I'm not gonna gut on the internet and say that I condone violence, but I am gonna say that, like, sometimes you have to meet force with force, and that's kinda like the responsibility as a martial artist that you have to kind of assess those situations. And we're educated in a way, like, not every martial arts school is gonna teach you how to fight. Not every, like, sort of situation you get into in the classroom unless you approach your teacher with very specific questions. And if you do have those questions, I would encourage you to ask your teacher about, like, how to handle a violent situation. Ask your teacher. And if
Mm-hmm.
they can't tell you, then find somebody else. Like
Whoosh.
sometimes we like to pretend like we have the answers and not everybody does. So, but anyway, to get back to kind of like what I was talking about, the
Come on. We all know your style
like
is the
we're
best
all
style in the world, and
perfect,
that's what we're supposed to be talking
flawless.
about.
You can tell after a while, and I've been around a minute. Like after a while, you can tell when somebody's just like, "Yeah, no, you just do this, and it'll work fine." And like, no, you don't. You don't know. And also, even if you do know, going into a violent situation, even if you quote unquote think you know what's going to happen, you don't know what's going to happen. There's so many people out there. There's so many comments that I've seen out there of people be like, "Oh, if I was in that situation, I do this or I do that." No, you don't. You have no idea what you would do. No idea, unless you have a long track record of being in violent situations, which is a
Right.
whole
And then you have a different problem.
yeah, it's a whole other lifestyle. But I think people kind of come to these realizations about how to interact under duress or when not to use your body, when you can kind of vibe that somebody's maybe doesn't have the best intentions for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
taught self-defense workshops where we don't even really get into some techniques, right? Like, so that you have the mostly a lot of the time it's like the women's self-defense stuff with a guy in the red man suit and you go to town on him and it's great. But there's also like some of it's just risk assessment and damage control and situational awareness and body language and how far away is that person from me. So teaching, I don't necessarily find that it's part of my job to teach somebody how to become violent if they're not violent. I can teach somebody how to generate power if they can't
Mm-hmm.
initially, and I can teach somebody how to assess range if they can't initially, and I can teach somebody how to kind of watch their own space and movement and kind of watch somebody else's space and movement. And
Mm-hmm.
those are all tools that you can use to manage violence. Now, if you're in a situation where like violence is gonna happen and you've never seen it before, like, you just don't know, like, you just don't know, and, like, sometimes it just takes one instance. Sometimes you hear a
Mm-hmm.
story about a friend of yours that was assaulted, and then suddenly your idea about protection and violence becomes very different. We have a really it's I feel like the social relationship with fisticuffs, with, like,
Yes, yes.
hand-to-hand combat in a way that's not friendly is kind of constantly changing. Like used to
Mm-hmm.
be that, you could get out and, there'd be bar brawling and like people would best friends and frenemies would like solve conflicts with just fighting and everything like that. And like
Mm-hmm.
they'd be drinking next to each other at the bar the next night. And now things are a little different. Like you could be facing assault charges. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot more as a woman, I consider violence in a very different way, I think, than if I was a man. That's just the way that things work these days and probably
Absolutely.
many days prior to now. So yeah, I don't know if and also I think that as people who walk through the door of a martial arts school or a kung fu school or whatever you're doing, I think there's something in most folks that are looking for kind of a way to channel that fire.
Mm-hmm.
And
For
I mean,
sure.
with the exception, so I'm a huge fan of Tai Chi Chuan. And I use it all the time. I use it in Shuai Jiao, I use it in Sanda, I use it obviously in Kung Fu, I use it all the time. Tai Chi principles, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that come in the door for a Tai Chi class are going to be people that a different sort of crowd that comes in
Yes.
the door for a Kung Fu class. So I guess in that way, like as a school teacher who owns an organization that has like bills to pay, I have to make
Right.
sure that the people, my students, essentially like my client, I don't think about them as my clients, I think about them as my students. But in a way, like
Right.
in the business world, they are my clients and I need to make sure that I'm giving them what they want. Our Tai Chi classes, now having said that, our Tai Chi classes are a little bit probably burn maybe a little bit hotter than something that's geared towards more holistic Tai Chi and like
Mm-hmm.
medicinal Tai Chi and Qigong, which is not to say like we brawl or anything, but like it's important that, we have a conditioning set and it's important that the students are able to do the conditioning set. Now, that doesn't mean that an 80-year-old can't come in and do it. They do it. I have 80-year-old students that come in and they do push ups and they do sit ups and,
Mm-hmm.
they do partner stretching and they love it. And it makes them stronger and it makes them more confident. So Does that allow them to deal with violence in a better way? Maybe. But like the mindset of that is a little bit different, I think. I
Well, I think it
sometimes
helps
think
them.
sorry, go ahead.
I think it helps them deal with violence just in their physical vessel is moving and is better than it was.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
It's a different mindset. Like I make sure that my students can understand applications in the form and movement. That does not mean that
Mhm.
my Tai Chi students fight with each other. They don't. They don't even like really doing push hands. I got a handful of people that like to do push hands. And, if we have enough time and enough space, then I'll stick them over in the corner and let them bang and clang for a while. But I find that, it's just a different crowd. And then the Kung Fu crowd, if somebody's coming in and looking for a way to manage like that hot, violent heat that they got in them,
Mhm.
good way to temper it. And it's a good way to find out what you may or may not want to do. Like my classroom might not be the best place for you if you want to go cage fighting. I don't know. I know people I can send you, but I can send you to somewhere else if you want to learn how to cage fight.
Mhm.
So it's a different like there is violence inherent, I think, in the practice of Kung Fu and Tai Chi. Now you mentioned being a bit masochistic initially, right? So there's
Mhm.
some of that is violence towards the
Mhm.
self, but then
Yeah.
also like there has to be a regulatory factor to that. Otherwise, people burn out,
Mhm.
right? You don't
Mhm.
see a lot of
For
cage
sure.
fighters that go beyond the age of like fish. Like we got Senchai
Right.
rocking his, doing his thing, but that he's not normal. Like
Right. For sure.
he's not the baseline of how these things work. So you got to balance it out. Like you can't train too hard all the time, all the time, all the time. You can't also back off and expect to have good results. There's a balancing act there. So as a teacher, channeling the ability of the body to assess and react to a violent situation, that's more of my job. And then also allowing the student to either turn their fire up for their own training or turn it down for their own training as well.
Mhm.
I think that's pretty important too. So I'm not sure if that answered your question.
No, that's good. That's good. Okay, so before I'm gonna derail us and then bring us back to martial arts, but I don't get to I'm not fortunate enough to speak to as many women as I get to speak to men, just because.
Go to the grocery store.
No, but as far as that's good, that's really good. No, as far as this world of martial arts goes,
Okay, sure. Yeah, I am.
there's not as many women teachers, women school owners. And
Yeah, yeah.
so what obstacles have you faced being a woman in this realm, in this club, in this, you
It's a boys'
know?
club.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not a boys' club because it's like most martial arts schools, it's not like women aren't welcome, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot about this actually. There's a lot of sort of nuanced things inherent in this it's sort of the way that sort of these spaces are socialized towards one gender versus the other.
Mhm.
It really depends on the school and in that it depends on the school owner. As a person coming up, I was denied a lot of um, opportunities because I'm a woman, not because of any diminished level of skill and not any diminished level of interest or ability, but just because I'm a woman, because I present a
Mhm.
certain way, right? Because I look a certain way, because people don't
Mhm.
see me and they don't think martial artist.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, if you're it's just another level of challenge. In a minority in a group, you're always gonna be faced with certain challenges. You're not gonna be picked first, you're not gonna be looked at as serious, you're not gonna be fundamentally treated the same way. So,
Mhm.
as a student, I was denied a lot of opportunities, like I said, and I wasn't taken as seriously by most of the teachers that I had. So there were some teachers that actually kind of like crazy treated me like a person, but there were plenty of other teachers that totally wrote me off as like just not a contender, not a person that would go anywhere or manifest anything or be able to do anything. The first organization that I was in wanted me to be a part of their like sort of soft martial art qigong situation, which I have interest in, but not just that. And the reason,
Yeah, yeah,
especially
yeah.
because they wanted me to be in that position, because I'm a woman, nothing else. Like there was no other reason.
Mm.
To, like if you know me,
So it was not martial art merit. It
Oh,
was to
absolutely not. I could have
balance a boat
to
because you're a
reintroduce
girl.
violence into the conversation. Like I could have beat the hell out of everybody in that room, and they wanted me to be the person in the harmonies category. Um, like occasionally I'll feel like a novelty. Like so, I remember having a conversation with a person I don't talk to anymore, and
It went well. Went
yeah, it
well.
was great. It went really well. I'll never forget it. Talking about how like we wanted to get another like higher level student practitioner and like kind of bring somebody up to the level that I was at, which was assistant. And like he was like, "Well, we need a man." I was like, "Okay." He was like, "Well, we already have a woman, so we need a man." It's like, come on, you want a man because you're annoyed that I'm here, and I'm not like your little boy pal. Come on. So like you get to have really cool conversations like that. You get to have conversations about like there was another in the same organization. One of the higher level practitioners looked right at me and was like, "Well, we need you in this position because we can use you because we can get other women because you're here." And I'm like, "That's cute. I like that." Um, in parentheses,
Like you're a
oh,
marketing tool?
yeah, oh, totally, totally, yeah. I'm a marketing tool. I'm a novelty in certain situations. Like you know how like the wrong way to look at like affirmative action stuff
Mm,
where it's like, it's pretty offensive.
right?
And kind of terrible and not really my favorite part of my memories looking back over this
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
journey here. Like so and then being a teacher and then becoming a relatively when I was working at Wudao, when I started at Wudao under Tim Hartman, like he would partner me with the men. Not a big person. I'm 5 foot nothing, and probably I range between 120 and 130 pounds. I'm not a huge person, but he would partner me with the big senior student guys and the men, and I trained with them and I out trained them. And, they were at the time, my trajectory in that space was to be their teacher. So I had to out train them. And if I was a man, it might have been a lot easier, physically easier for me to do that because all I would have had to do is show up and just do what they were doing and maybe look a little better doing it than they did. But I
Yes.
like tried. It's like that phrase. I can't remember who said it. I'm sure people credit. I think Ginger Rogers was saying it that women have to do everything that men have to do, but we have to do it backwards and in heels. So I mean, you can look at this relationship as something that's fabricated, or you can look at this relationship as something that's oppressive, or you can look at the dynamics as something that's like, oh, you're just making it up. Or you can be like, this is a real thing. Well, it's been my real lived experience to have these experiences, and I see them and I see it not every day because thankfully my students and my school is a really safe space for women and any other gender there and thereof, like any and all. Everybody is welcome there.
Hmm.
So my experience coming up in Wudao was very equal. Tim and his wife Cece ran the space, and she was a very, she was a presence there. And I think it would have been a very different environment if maybe I think that Tim was like pretty on it as well. And he was also very open to criticism when it came to maybe some of the language that he would be using teaching. I know I mentioned this in another cast that I did, but he was also like just really kind of good natured and
Mm,
not belligerent when it came to kind of accepting feedback from his students, which was nice. It was a refreshing kind of change of gears. But then as, owning Wudao and being handed the school in 2018 and like kind of taking it over, I had already the confidence of the senior students, which was good. And then, you just deal with it. Like I've had people that walk in and they know that they find out that I'm the teacher and they leave or they hang up or they don't they don't want a woman telling what to do, and that's fine. They don't need to.
hmm.
That's fine. They don't no skin off my back. If they don't want to be there, I don't want them there.
Right.
And and then competition wise, there's like in ICMAC, the women and the men compete separately. In our regional competition that we had, the women and the men compete together in forums and in the reaction drills unless otherwise specified. Um, I've done mixed gendered competitions. Like I recently um, competed in Colorado at their, I think it's 5280 is their big deal championship that they got going on. It was a non-gendered forums round, and won. I took grand
Nice.
champion. And also, like, it's interesting because you're kind of asking me this question. I'm listening to a really interesting book that, as anybody out there, if you want to get real mad, it's called All in Her Head, and it's about how the medical history has sort of treated and set to the side a lot of things that are unique to the women's experience. So,
Probably not a
yeah, if you ever need
probably not a
some, if
light
you ever want
read.
to rage stroke out, listen to that book. I'm about halfway through it. It's set afire. But I mean, the experience of teaching, if you know your stuff, like kung fu is really nice in that way because like I can tell somebody that if you put your fingers like this, if you put your legs like this, if you turn your hips like this, you're gonna be able to hit a lot harder. And then they do what I tell them to do, and then it works. And then they
Mhm.
stop doing it and it doesn't work. And you don't have to be male, female, big, small, nothing. You could just be a voice in the clouds and tell them the same thing, and the same thing is true.
Mhm.
You know, structure
Mhm.
is structure, power is power. The trouble comes when people start to create these narratives that overshadow those things, you know, the stuff that doesn't really matter, you know, like it's about training and it's about the art and it's about
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
horse stance and his horse stance and their horse stance, still a horse stance, you know.
Mhm.
And if you can hold it for 5 minutes, get it. If you can't, cool. That has nothing to do with any of that. So
Mhm.
it's definitely kind of created a certain type of practitioner in me. Like I definitely try a lot
Mhm.
harder than perhaps if I wasn't a woman, and can become incredibly frustrating. I've had a lot of dark nights of the soul where I'm like, why am I even doing this? There's literally no need for me to show up in this room if nobody's going to treat me like a person.
Mm.
Like, and in the combat sports world, it's a little bit different.
Mhm.
Huge win with Mr. Tate getting his lights knocked out. We all like that. We
Yeah.
love that.
Yes.
We could watch that
Yes.
forever.
Yes. I've watched it a couple dozen
Oh,
times.
so there are so many angles. Delightful. Yeah, so it's one of those things that's like, I don't know, the ignorant argument is like, I don't care if you're a woman, just don't like rub it in my face. It's like, I just exist. Is that a problem for you? I'm not rubbing anything in your face, asshole. Like,
Right.
come on.
Right.
So like it's a lot, and it's been an experience, and like I'm not running the school with a partner. I'm doing it by myself. Like that's a little common in this area. I think I might be one of the only people in this area that does that. If not, then come find me. I want to talk to you. Like if you're a lady school owner and you're doing it on your own, let me know and we can get coffee. But yeah, it's just been different. And like I've been lucky enough to have men training partners that don't make it weird, and they don't treat me like glass, and they don't go too hard either, because training's clinical. Like it shouldn't be weird. You shouldn't be uncomfortable. There's a lot of women that have explained this a lot better than I'm doing it. Probably. There's Larody on Instagram. She's great. There's another woman that just sort of cropped up called what is it, Muay Thai Musings or something like that. But they talk a lot about being a woman in the fight sports community and kind of how the spaces are. I mean, we're there, women are there, but that doesn't mean that we feel comfortable there. And like, check your
Right. Right.
if you're a school owner and you've got a fair, like, how are your women treated? What are they saying? What are they saying when they think you can't hear? There's always a whisper net. There's
Right.
always a whisper net. You know, if there's one guy that maybe they don't want to work with, but they kind of work with sometimes, and maybe it's just because he needs to take a shower, like, or maybe it's because he's being a creep.
Hopefully it's just a shower.
Yeah, so we hope it's just the shower. And like I was talking to, so I trained for a while under Sunny Manon for some Shuaijiao stuff, and I was chatting with him last night, and we were talking about titles and all of these things. And you don't see the term shifu is thrown around a lot, and I say it all the time, like there are plenty of people that are far more qualified and experienced than I am that don't have the title of shifu. Shifu
Okay.
Tim like texted me one January. I'll never forget it. I was walking my dog, and he sent me a text. And oftentimes when you get promoted to shifu, there's like bells and whistles and ceremony and incense and music and all these things and sashes and prayer or whatever. And he sent me a text and yeah, fireworks, dragons, you know. And he was like, he had seen an Instagram reel of me referring to myself as Shidia because that's what I called myself. That's like the older Kung Fu sister moniker. And he sent me a text and he was like, you probably start calling yourself Shifu. And I was like, okay. Some of those students had already been calling me that just out of respect for the position. And it's one of these things that it means a lot till it doesn't mean anything. But the reason that I kind of have that title and I put it on the website is because I feel like it's important for young men and men and women of all ages and all theys, thems, and everybody's to see that you don't have to be a man to be a Shifu. You can be a
Mm, mm.
about representation. You know, it's not only this one type of person that looks this certain way, that presents this certain way, that can be this, that can have this job, I guess. So it is more about that. And I went back and forth about it for a while, and like I know some friends of mine only ever call like the only person that they call, and technically the only person you should call Shifu is your own teacher, because
Mhm.
otherwise it's a little weird, like calling somebody else dad or mom. So, and it is a familial kind of mentorship, and it's a precious relationship that is really unique to somebody. So in a way, it's like you have to earn not only the title, but you have to also earn the ability to call somebody that too. So
Sure.
yeah, but yeah, this is like I could go on forever about like what it's been like. Some things are great, some things are not
No,
so great. It's challenging and horrible, and sometimes it's
clearly.
really validating. And when I won the grand championship in Colorado, this little girl ran up to me and gave me a hug. She was like so excited to see a woman doing the thing, and she was like,
Yeah.
"I want to do this. I want to do Tai Chi." I was like, "You're 9, honey. Go for it." You know?
Yeah. Do it now. You'll be starting at 9 is a wonderful age to start.
Sure. Yeah. So it's good. And it's been, I mean, we're here. Women have, it's not like we were just invented this goddamn century. Like we've been here all along, just like people of color, just like trans folks, just like everybody else. That's for some
Mhm.
reason we now have to fight for the right to exist. We've been here and we're not going anywhere. So the best thing to do is just accept it and move on. Cause like
Mhm.
suddenly, like my life is somebody else's business. No, it's not. I just live just like everybody else is allowed to live. Like, imagine that. Imagine leaving trans people alone. Like, imagine that. um, so yeah, not in the way that like, oh, I don't see color kind of way, but you know what I mean. Like,
No, no, that leave them alone is an exact thought that I had at some point in time last night. Just like, why does that matter to you?
right.
Like, what are we doing? Why does that matter?
No, it's astounding. Anyway, so that yeah, it's been it's a good question actually, and it's something that I think a lot of people
Yeah.
are not scared to talk about, but it's definitely a charged conversation. Like I'm really mindful of what I am in the environments that I'm in and like the influence that I have and the ability that I have to like say the wrong thing. But my intentions are good and like I try to represent everybody. And like I said, everybody's welcome at Wudao. Like Chifu Tim
Yeah.
was always saying there's no male or female martial artist, it's just martial artists. It doesn't really I mean,
I
sometimes it makes a difference, but you manage those moments and when they come up.
I think I have a little bit of a different experience. Obviously, I have a different experience being a man, but I have a different experience in that I started in a martial arts school. My home base martial arts school is owned by a woman,
Yeah.
and at the time, she owned two schools. And then when I started teaching at the school that I started at, and then moved to the third school that she opened up, and was teaching out of that. So like I just have a different experience because it's always like my martial arts experience is that there's always been a woman around. And
Yeah,
she
and
was
so for
very
you, I'm sure it's very
yeah.
obvious.
So she was very much accepted. So like any female student that I've ever had is like, oh, this could be the next Joan. Like
I've
so
had like
you
a lot of my senior students have had similar experiences where their first teacher was like some badass lady, and like that's just it's normalized for
she's
them. Like my the principal at
Lin-
my first school was a woman, like so that was just in
Lindsay,
my purview. Yes,
Lindsay,
yes.
my instructor, Joan, has been hit by a car twice.
That poor car.
And the second time, she was trying to teach a week after.
Gosh, come on, that's
Yeah, no,
terrible.
she
I'm glad she's
she's
all
bad.
right.
She's bad. You're friends with Chris Himmel. I met Chris in Marshall Summit. He has been the introduction into the gateway drug that has now been called Bagua.
Cool.
And I won't say I won't say that over my 32 years I haven't uh studied or come across Bagua, but never to like any nauseum until this moment.
Right.
So I had him on, and we did a conversation where we were talking about a class that I did in Marshall Summit that I'm calling Free to Flow. And I'm going to give you a crash course on everything that I'm working on as far as free to flow and yielding goes so that we can have the conversation that Chris thinks that we should have. Well, but also I think that we should have. So the idea is I have a lot of people that are disenfranchised, that are my students that are in disenfranchised parts of communities that are LGBTQ, and I do a special class just for them so that there's a safe space while they work through things. And a lot of them are nonviolent in some capacity. Most of my viewers and anybody that wants to now, because I've been on a couple podcasts and I talk about it, I come from a childhood trauma-ish background-ish. Somebody's going to laugh at that and call me out on that.
You're right.
Yeah. Victims do not spend the rest of their life downplaying what has happened to them. That is not what happens. So, right. I recognize that when I am teaching somebody that is nonviolent, that a punch to the face is not going to be a technique that they are going to. And so we spend a lot of time trying to work on. Everybody says soft skills is the like situational awareness and everything else and all this, that, and the other. And I personally have always pushed back on that because I think that those are called de-escalation techniques. Like those are things that happen before the altercation. And then us as martial artists, we are aware that there are soft things that I can do, my soft skills that I have while fighting, and then my hard skills that I have while fighting. And those dictate the fight in very different ways. So that's the pushback. But so instead of teaching yielding, I am teaching free to move or free to flow. I don't care if you yield. I want you to be free to flow. I want you to be free to continue to move. I also don't use the word relax any longer because relax to a student's mind, they don't get it. You know, obviously there's some tension that exists here in this body that is sitting up or standing up. So it's not relaxed all the way. So they just don't get it. So I just keep it free to flow.
Okay.
Right. And so I taught the class in Keene, met up with Chris. We were talking to him. And then he told me that you are his Luhi Bafa teacher. And I had, yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know anything about that, but we were talking about the intersection that exists between Tai Chi Chuan and Bagua and how that kind of helps with yielding. So the questions, ad nauseum discussion, if you will, is on yielding. What do you do when you teach yielding specifically? Maybe touch on the Louis Bafa and the idea is this. We as martial artists, we kind of get the idea of yielding. I've been doing it for 32 years. I got it a lot, not all the way, you know? And what I want to do is I want to get a curriculum that gets people to, well, I'm really comfortable with this quicker, you know, so that I can take my I don't teach self-defense clinics in what's a standard thing. I have a class that is called the Self-Defense Clinic, and it is a weekly reoccurring thing because I think it's disingenuous to be like 4 hours and I'll teach you.
And then, yeah, you can go out and like defend yourself. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I was talking about it before. It's more about principles and kind of things, tools you
Yes.
already have that you
Yes.
can use in a
Yes.
different way. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, the floor is yours. Luhi Bafa, which I had not even heard of. I'm probably saying it wrong. I probably said it 5 different ways. I hadn't heard of it till Chris brought it up, said that it's an interesting component and would be, yeah. So he's going to show me some of it next year.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna check his movement next week, I think. So, Bafa is the 6 harmonies and 8 methods, and the harmonies and the methods kind of differ based on what you're kind of looking at. But it's basically the relationships between like your intention and your spirit and your movement and your like your movement and your body and kind of all of these elements that kind of come and flow and go into the movement. Now, Bafa is made up of Tai Chi Xingyi and Bagua. So it has elements in the form. The form is about 55 movements long. And it takes about as long as to do the 108, depending, maybe a little bit less. So the movements are comprised of a number of things, kind of like Grass the Sparrow's tail has 4 parts. It's one movement's got 4 parts. And in Bafa, there's a handful of movements that have like 6 or 7 parts. That's just the way that the form is built up. And so it moves in several different ways, and you can kind of create the form like beginning to end with a Tai Chi vibe. You can do it with a Bagua vibe. You can do it with a Xingyi vibe. There are also movements within the form that have maybe more of a specific some of them are definitely Xingyi, some of them are definitely Bagua, and some of them are definitely Tai Chi. Based on like you can pick it out, and like if you don't know what you're looking at and you're watching a Bafa form, but you do know Xingyi, you can be like, that's Xingyi, but that's not Xingyi. What are they doing? Or same with Bagua. Like they're walking around and they're doing this thing and they're, that's not Bagua, but that's Bagua. What is that? Blue Bafa's not that old. It's also very, it's more of like an esoteric form. There's a handful of different variations that are out there. The one that I know is handed down via Master Weilin Huang, who sadly passed away in 2016. And that
Mm,
sucks. Everybody's sad that he's gone. But I've been able to work with some lineage holders and review some old video of him. There's a cool performance of him doing that on the YouTubes if you ever want to watch it. Um, in connecting those three internal styles, of the three internal styles, my weakest is Xingyi. And I actually just came back from a Xingyi class at Full Circle Tai Chi with Lao Karim Ben Saunders, which was awesome. So if you're in the Oxford, Worcester area, look up Karim Ben Saunders at Full Circle Tai Chi. It was awesome. He's wonderful. A really great group, super, super good quality education over there. So hoping to kind of, in the interest of building up my Xingyi stuff. So in terms of talking about like how that form allows you to yield, there's certain areas of Tai Chi. Not a lot of them, but there's certain areas of it. And also, so my Tai Chi also comes from Weilin Huang as well.
okay.
So his movement's really big and out there and very horizontal. And it's kind of very forward and very aggressive. And it's not like, it doesn't kind of sink into the back leg, almost like
Mm-hmm.
the Chen Mancheng style does. And if you've ever met Master Huang, I don't know who's gonna be able to listen to this or whatever. If you've ever met him, you know what I'm talking about. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was a spicy man, great, amazing talent, but like he was very his Tai Chi was very fighty. It was very aggressive. Like he grew up fighting in the streets of Foshan, so like he's an aggressive guy. So in terms of yielding in that way and yielding using Bagua and yielding using Tai Chi or yielding using any of those principles, there's moments and forms when you know the form and you can kind of exist in it. When you're really doing quote unquote doing
Mm-hmm.
Tai Chi, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the party stat when you talk about Tai Chi is like, it's a moving meditation. And nobody knows what either of those things mean. They just put those two those two words together and they're like, it's a moving meditation. You're like, all right, cool.
Sounds pretty.
It doesn't it? It's a gimmick. But like there are moments when you are kind of in those forms and it's almost like surfing a little bit. Or almost like sledding or skiing, or like you're moving through sort of effortlessly, and the yielding principles kind of come where you need to make a directional change because the force that you're dealing with is your own momentum, right? And then unless you're working with another person,
Mm-hmm.
every time you're moving in Tai Chi or Qingyi or Bagua or whatever, at least in my experience with Tai Chi and Bagua, you are softening the edges of your redirection. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's more of like a yielding principle to me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's slowing down one thing to accelerate another thing in another
Mm-hmm.
direction. And in wrestling, you use that principle a lot. And as a smaller player, I have no choice but to do that or get bulldozed 100% of the time, which definitely happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate enough to train with a gentleman named Tian, and Tian's a big guy. And when I was training with him, he was 283 pounds. Like he was a big boy. And I needed to use those principles to move him. I had to redirect, literally redirect what he was giving me because I wasn't going to
Mm-hmm.
stop it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, T. I don't know if you were 183 pounds. I think you were around there. I just want to apologize to Tian. I'll text him later. I think that's what he told me it was. Uh, anyway, but it was he's a lovely. He was a wonderful partner for me, and we made a lot of progress together. At least he helped me. I don't know if I helped him at all, but it was incredibly obvious
Mm-hmm.
the yielding and the redirecting in many different ways because we have this idea that if you're yielding or redirecting, it's one thing. It's this force coming in and I catch it, yield it, and redirect it. But if you're in multiple points of contact with something, you're doing that in several different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing it with your shoulders, your hips, your head, your wrists, your elbows. If you're
Mm-hmm.
wrestling with somebody, if you're doing push hands, it's quite similar. But then if you consider that kind of what you were talking about is like the soft skills or like the de-escalation skills, you're doing it in tone, you're doing it
Mm-hmm.
in vocabulary, you're doing it in distance, you're doing it in pitch, you're doing it in, objective what's the point here? Like what are we trying to get towards here? So there's like in the conversation element of yielding or the social element of yielding, there's a lot of things that we deal with simultaneously all the time. And I think unless you've had to de-escalate a situation, you probably don't know how to do it great. But we all kind of have that in us, I think. You're not just going to be like, stop that. I've done that before. I've stuck my finger in someone's face and said, stop talking. but that's not an elegant way of doing. Like I've done it, but it it yielded a different, quote unquote, yielded a different result.
Yeah, yielded. You're a feisty 5 foot.
Yeah, you have no idea. So, but Bafa and Tai,
I'm 6'5.5" by
yeah,
comparison.
you're nothing but trouble. So, but yeah, I think that the Bafa and like the soft arts and the damage control, and like at the end of the day, like I'm spicy, but I would prefer not to get hurt, and I would prefer not to hurt
Sure.
anybody else. So if it comes to the option of having a very strong conversation with somebody over like
Mhm,
potentially hurting somebody or getting hurt myself, I'm gonna take the strong conversation 100% of the time.
mhm.
It doesn't bother me. Like if we can chat and figure it out, let's do it. Like words can sometimes never be taken back, but if you break somebody's neck or I don't know, give somebody a black eye, they're never going to look at you the same way again. Like that was
Yeah,
funny what
look
I
at you
just
like that.
um but
You said something that was very interesting to me. You said damage control.
damage
What
control.
yeah, do you have technique that you teach as part of damage control?
For what? For like for social situations or for like for physical interactions?
Physical conflict.
Mostly it's just like not you either need to stay away, like somebody keep them at range. If they're
Mhm,
already in range,
mhm,
Bafa has this really cool movement where you seal down
mhm.
with both hands. You seal down with both hands. Like you do that in push hands all the time. If somebody's hands are down and you're on top, they can't hit you very easily. You can feel them if they start to come in and they don't have access to really move you so well. So, I mean, that in terms of one technique, I think that might be the best one. But if you damage control can mean a lot of things. It can mean like not being in that space, or it can mean like hit them in the penis. It can also
Right.
mean that depending on what the stakes are and whatever kind of tone you're going for. So it really depends.
That's a great answer. You helped me a lot, actually, more than you could. That's good. That is good. Okay, so now I first of all, I try and keep these at an hour. We're probably going to go over by a couple minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I like to be respectful of people's time. Okay, so this is like kind of the lightning round. Take all the time that you want. These are
Okay.
shorter. These are shorter questions. Okay, what do you think the average practitioner neglects in their martial arts?
Their own practice outside of the classroom.
What? You gotta do that? I actually only ask that question because that's the most common answer, and my students listen to my podcast and they hear
Oh,
it from
that's
not me.
that's good. Well, it's
That's the
practicing
whole
outside of class time. Class
yeah,
time should be getting information. Outside of class time should be processing information. If you never process the information, all the new information doesn't matter. That's why people,
so
learn very slowly, and that's fine. That's the world we live in. Not everybody has time for that, and I respect that. It's okay. But that is it. That is the answer.
that's a good answer. If you could give every martial arts practitioner in the world one concept, thought, idea, technique, training, philosophy, what would it be?
This could sound really kind of silly and goofy or whatever, but I think the idea of being kind first is lost a lot of the time.
Mm,
Because I think sometimes we're in the martial community, it's hard, hard, hard. And like, I was taught like this, and this is hard, and get a helmet or whatever the phrase is. And it's not,
hmm
y- that's why not a lot of people do this. Because
right.
it's like you have to go through the veil of abuse to get any skill. And I don't think that
Mm,
should be the way it is. So I think leading with kindness is important. And I'm not gonna say that I have 100% done that, because sometimes I don't, but at the very least, leading with neutrality before hostility,
mm.
because, like, it's not I don't know, the world is awful right now, so it's important, I think, to kinda give each other a little grace.
That is a great answer. That is an answer that echoes how few women I have on my podcast.
Well, we gotta deal with it. The thing that nice people don't come by being nice because they were, like, nice to. We don't get there
Right.
by people treating you right. Like, it's
Right.
women have maybe and, other marginalized communities have a tendency towards that because they've felt the other end of things, and
hmm
it's not great, and I don't wanna be the person that inflicts that on somebody else.
Sure. I want to ask, I usually ask if there's anybody that's not a martial artist that happens to find this podcast and is listening, watching, or happens to see a clip. I usually ask what advice you would give to them, but I want to tailor it just a little bit more specifically to female audience. So if there's any female that's watching this that hasn't done martial arts yet, but is thinking about it, what advice would you give to them?
If you're a woman looking to get into martial arts, like try a handful of different schools, and kind of watch and see how the students act. And like this is what I did anyway. Like, and you want to do this anyway as anybody walking in, but I understand the stakes are a little bit different.
Mhm,
Watch how the students are around the teacher. Watch how the other women are around the teacher.
mhm,
See if you can chat with some of the women and see like the men work if it's a combat sports gym, see if the men work with the women, and if they do, are they different? If working with the
mhm,
women is the rest round, if like if they're treated differently, if they're not given the same opportunities, if they're overlooked, if there's like the token woman there, you know that's a thing that happens. So like while they're like BJJ gyms and some combat sport gyms are becoming a little bit more safe havens for women practitioners, just that because we're there doesn't mean that it's safe, you know. So talk to people, and like I said, there's always a whisper net. So try see if you can find that. And listen to how the other male students are talking. Are they making sexist jokes, and it's just part of the community? And that goes for both combat and traditional spaces. Like, are the men being disgusting, and are they crossing, quote unquote, crossing by plausible deniability social boundaries that make the space uncomfortable for women passively? It's like those situations where people are like abusive relationships or cult situations where everybody's like, well, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave? It's not always that easy, and it's not always that obvious either. And sometimes like maybe it's the only sports combat place in the area, or maybe it's the only kung fu thing in the area, and you've always wanted to do this, and maybe this guy is kind of a creep, and maybe he happens to be the owner, but I guess I'll push through and see what happens. Like, and also kind of decide how those if you want to put yourself in those positions, or if you decide to put yourself in those positions, like what is that going to cost you? What kind of environment are you going to put yourself in that may or may not cost you your peace at home or your anxiety leading up to those classes? Or
mm,
the conversations that you have with other people, or what are you lying to yourself about if you're accepting that kind of behavior, just to have the ability to train, you know, what's important. Because right now, like we have online classes all over the place. There's gyms all over the place. There's training halls all over the place. You won't have to settle for something that you're uncomfortable with. So really ask yourself those questions. So somebody that's never gotten, and this is like a cautionary tale, I don't mean to be so dramatic, but I've known plenty of people that have had really bad experiences, and it's
mhm,
it's almost it's almost comic. Like if you follow McDojo, it's like every other week some idiot's coming out of having molested his students, or having had affairs, or having done this or been appropriate, and it's like, what, the risk is there, so why not be aware of it and do what you got to do.
sure. So as you were answering that, you kind of gave me a part two. And would you also give any advice to any female martial arts practitioner that's looking to compete? If there's somebody that's, on the fence, what
Yeah, I
advice
mean,
would
do
you
it. Do it. See how it feels. Do the thing. If you want to compete, compete. What are the things that are in your way? And so the other part of that is I am a woman and probably will continue to be one. And like the thing is that like if you
I
want,
also unrelated, like your hoodie. If I
yeah.
don't tell you right now, I'm not going to be able to remember to tell you I like your hoodie.
So I work for a dog walking company. It's Positive Dog. It's the name of
That's
the, yeah,
cool.
but on top it says
Okay.
Positive.
I just says positive, so
Yeah.
I like that. Anyway,
Yeah. But no, it's yeah, it's my side jam. What was the question? Oh, competing. If it's like if you want people to be on the dance floor, you got to get on the dance floor. Like,
absolutely,
so
absolutely.
I've been to nationals at Schweizau Nationals 3 times, and the first time it was me and one other woman, 2 women, national event.
Mm.
And then the next year, three in my division, and then 2 in another division, and then 2 perhaps in another division beyond that. So math.
What year was that?
First time I went was 2023. Second time was 2024. Yeah, yeah, recent. Well, I mean, pandemic kind of shut down a lot of things, and but also,
Sure,
yeah, yeah.
sure.
That's my excuse for that. Anyway,
Those
and then
numbers are not very strong.
last year there were more women. There
Mhm.
were 3 in my division. There were supposed to be 3 in my teammates division, but one ended up blowing it off, which was not cool. And then there were maybe a couple of other ones. So, and they were there because they went, because they thought about competing and they weren't sure if it was for them, and then they did it. And like, if you don't do it, women won't have anybody to compete with. Now, I understand that there's a lot of really, like, it's really frustrating to prepare for a competition. And if there's weight cutting, there's a whole other culture surrounding, like, controlling
Yeah.
your body and making your body a certain way that women have to deal with that men don't. But in this culture, it's different, which can be really stressful and triggering for people. So competing in like weight class sports or something like that, that can also be very daunting. But do it, because you'll really love the fact that you did it. You'll know more about it afterwards. It's never as bad as you think it's going to be. Like the cool
Hmm.
thing about kung fu competitions is that you just go and you do what you do when you train. You're basically training with an audience. So like go in and train, and like go in and train in a different environment, in a different costume with different people watching. So yeah, I would in traditional forms, in sparring, in Choi Jiao, in weapons, in push hands, just get out there. Like women, get out there and compete, because women are not taken seriously as men are, because there aren't that many of us doing it. And the reason there aren't that many of us doing it is because there aren't that many of us doing it. If that makes sense. There's a lot of other stuff behind that, and other people have talked way more about that. Like I said, when we do the links for the cast, if it's okay, I'll include those other women's handles, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. All right. So is there anything that you didn't get a chance to say that you wanted to say?
I don't think so. I appreciate the
What didn't I ask?
oh, no, you're good. Like you said, like I already kind of went over like the origin story and talking about weapons and all that stuff and teaching and this and that. Like I appreciate the availability to talk about more like social issues and like the being not a man going into this environment, or at least like kind of how that plays into the different choices that we make as we train, and the different communities that we have around us, and kind of how we manage our practice and manage how far we get, and if we think we can get far. Because a lot of people are like, I don't see any women in this room, and I've been the only woman in the room so many times. If
Hmm.
that, it's not even a thing that registers for me anymore until like later on. I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm in a room. I went to a push hands workshop, and like everybody was filing in. There was like 20 yards and me. And then there was another woman that showed up, which was cool. And I think, having more women in the room will make it more friendly to women.
Hmm.
There will be less places for the scum to hide. There will be less excuses to be made for bad behavior, because everybody sees it, which is not to assume. And I'm not assuming this is not a not all men's conversation. Like I know that there are plenty of men out there that behave fine. And if the things that I am saying bother you, then you might want to check and make sure that you're not one of those men.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because I was going to. I was like, I don't have a problem with this conversation.
And like I get it. It sucks. It sucks when you're part of the problem. Like being a white woman
For
isn't my
sure.
favorite thing right now. Like it sucks.
Right.
So,
For
but
sure.
like you also have to understand that there's certain responsibilities and certain things that you can do or not do that make those circumstances better. So I appreciate the fact that like this is maybe a different tone than other casts that I've done or other interviews that I've done. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm glad. This is my love letter to martial arts, and this is my attempt to build the community up better than it currently is. So like
Yeah.
those conversations are just as important as how to front kick. Like
Right.
yeah. I mean, you know what I'm saying. And I think that some of this stuff is what's lost in the minutia, and in some ways was overlooked for a very long time, and in overlooking it, it's how we got to where we currently are. It's in my mind, because I've been doing martial arts for 32 years. It'll be 33 in May.
Nicely done.
And I've been teaching. It'll be 29 years in May. And I'm like, I've been doing this for a lifetime, and this hasn't gotten better. So that's kind of where I come from with that. Do you want to tell anybody watching how to find you, or do you want to be unfindable?
We can be found. That's fine. Wu
Okay.
Dao is www.wudaokungfu.com. My email is wudaokungfu@gmail.com. Our Instagram is at wudaokungfu. And our Facebook is Wudao Kung Fu and Tai Chi, but it's not the French one. There's a French one. And yeah, reach out, hit me up. I've had a handful of people.
Do you have a YouTube? You said
No,
everything.
we used to have a YouTube. There is a Wudao YouTube, and if you want to look, it's great. It's got some of our older students on there doing some really cool things at tournaments, but I haven't updated it in ages. And it's if you want to really see what we do, go to our Instagram page. That's the best way to do it. don't call me because the phone I don't think works. Yeah, but yeah, come by if you have questions. And if you're like I said before, if you're a woman that owns a school by yourself and like you wanna get some tea sometime.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Lindsay, I want to thank you, first of all, for your time because I know time is very precious and I appreciate you giving yours so that we can have this conversation. I also want to thank you for having this conversation with me. You are now a part of my martial arts journey, whether you like it or not. To be determined. That's good. Do you go to Martial Summit ever? I assume you're up that way.
I think Elliot goes. Elliot's a guy that owns a school around me. I think he does go. I'm kind of most of my spoons are used for teaching and training, and a lot of my spoons are not social spoons.
Sure.
So
That's very
I'd go
fair.
once in a while if I felt the need, but yeah, I can check it out.
Well, I went this past year and I will be back again next year. And so if you
Okay,
go, make sure we connect and
sure.
we can meet in person.
All right.
It really is good. Lastly, I want to thank anybody that watched this or listened to this. I hope you got something out of it. And as always, keep kicking.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.